Hello, this is Elasticity Review, and then new concept of taxes and price controls. And I'm going to try to do it quick in not too many videos. So here we go. So first off, almost everybody got this right. So you're looking at the 0.18 here, which makes it inelastic, 1.22, which makes it elastic because it's above 1. And this one is inelastic because it's 0.53. On to the next one. So this is what you did yesterday on Monday. So part A, it's all about substitutes and how many substitutes it will have. So household B is going to have more elastic because more substitutes equals more elastic. Should we assume that the quantity demanded will remain unchanged? No, because the law of demand still applies for question 2. For question 3, do you think the same concept identified above would apply to these? So the one that has the least number of replacements is insulin, and then the one in the middle is running shoes, and then the one at the bottom is Granny Smith apples, because you can substitute Granny Smith, you can substitute any number of other varieties of apples, plus you can substitute other fruits. So plenty of stuff. So that's what it says here. And then to summarize, demand is more elastic when there's more available substitutes. Second thing, part B. So this is all about proportion of income. So larger proportion of income means household A will have the more elastic demand because it's going to take up more of their income. And then based on percentage of income, the least elastic is going to be chewing gum, then clothing, then automobiles being the largest proportion of their income, and then goods that command a large proportion of a consumer's income tend to be more price elastic. Very good. Part C. So this is necessities. So necessity will be considered inelastic, and anything that would be considered addictive would be elastic, or habit forming would be inelastic. Price elasticity demand for automobiles. So short run, going to be more elastic. So that means that people will end up, thinking about it if they have time to think about it. And then goods that are necessary are less elastic, and ones that are luxuries are going to be more elastic. The longer the time frame, the more elastic. And then there's a concept here called a durable good, basically the sort of thing that you can use over and over and over and over and over again. And those are going to be more elastic as well because you can use them over and over again. So now on to this part, which is talking about some real world situations. And basically, whenever I give you one of these, you can pretty much assume that everybody's just wrong. They're always wrong. So I am Politico. He's wrong. The demand for things like cigarettes and liquor are not elastic. They're inelastic because they are habit forming. So therefore, a tax on these commodities will not curb their consumption that much. A little bit, yes, but that much, not really. You Are Cool proposes freezing the price of gasoline. There's no substitutes of gasoline. Well, yeah, there aren't very many substitutes, but that doesn't mean that the law of demand doesn't apply. So people will have some alternatives, and that includes driving cars with smaller engines, carpooling, using public transportation, or driving an electric car like me. So following its example in 1973, people conserved gas and sales were lower than they would have been otherwise. And then the last page here, number 3, Councilman Vic Agua opposed the price increase for water during a recent drought. He claimed that there's no substitute for water. Well, okay, maybe, but demand for water is inelastic. But if you raise this price, there will be a change in consumption at all. It's not like it's just a straight up and down line. The law of demand still applies. And then Sky King, the last one, he's wrong because vacation travelers and business travelers have different demand. Business travelers have to go, they're going to be more inelastic, whereas vacationers can postpone it or do something else, and therefore that's going to be more elastic demand. All right, join me again for new information. Here we go, some new stuff in 5 minutes or less. Fun. So, We're talking about price ceiling and price floors. Now, here's the thing that's confusing about price ceilings and price floors. Price ceilings are actually below what would be considered the market equilibrium price, the market equilibrium price being right here. Oh, the price ceiling is below it. So think of a ceiling as something preventing you from getting to the second floor, as if you had some sort of superhero jumping powers. So, that out of the way, what does a price ceiling do? Well, one of the things it does is it creates a situation where demand is higher than supply because the price is artificially low. So, this gap right here is going to be a surplus of goods, a surplus of goods. So, extra unsold bags of rice in this case. Then over here, there's a lot going on here. Because of this price ceiling that's actually working, because it's keeping the price lower than it would be if it were at equilibrium, we can see that consumer surplus has increased. We have a consumer surplus gain right here. So a price ceiling is put in place to benefit consumers. Producer surplus has shrunk by quite a bit, but there's also this thing here called DWL. DWL is short for dead weight loss. That's dead weight loss. Dead weight loss is essentially what could be efficiency that is not working. It's inefficiency. It's a way of showing market inefficiency because that is not going to the consumers or the producers. It's going to no one in particular. So a price ceiling is meant to put in place to benefit consumers, but there is a definite law that it's not as efficient overall because there's going to be an overall loss in total surplus here. This whole triangle, this part is now not counted. You're only counting this, this, this in consumer, and just this in producer. So the market is kind of held in forced disequilibrium here. Okay, now onto a price floor. So just like a ceiling would prevent you from jumping up to the next floor, a price floor prevents you from falling down into the basement. So price floor right here, this is what equilibrium would be. It's preventing the price from getting down that low. So what does it do? Well, it creates a surplus of goods because there's extra unsold here. This one creates a shortage of goods, more demand than supply. This one, more supply than demand. So extra that's just sitting there unsold because the price is so high. It causes an increase for the producers and consumer surplus decreases. And again, we have that dead weight loss, that benefit that nobody gets right here because of that price floor. So again, the market is held in disequilibrium because of that. So this is usually put into place by governments to try to correct something they think is unfair for either consumers or producers. So agricultural produce is given as an example here. And as you do the assignment today, you'll have to find like a real world example. And a lot of the ones you'll find, especially for price floors, are some sort of agricultural product. So right here, this is a price floor, keeps the price from going down too low. Price ceiling keeps the price from going up too high. Price floor helps the producers. Price ceiling helps the consumers. Both of them are inefficient and have dead weight loss. Now on to excise taxes. Excise taxes are taxes on a particular good. So if you remember from our supply and demand determinants, a determinant of supply is a change in taxes. Here you can see visually, we have our original supply curve and the supply curve after the taxes have been excised in this case, because they're excise taxes. What do we have? Oh, we have our friend deadweight loss again. Because of this, we have our tax revenue, which is taken out here from sort of where the supply curve here and the new equilibrium is. That's how much in revenue the government's going to get from this. And then up here, we see that consumer surplus and producer surplus are affected. The last thing I want to tell you is all about the incidence of a tax. Who bears the incidence of the tax? So the third video will be me talking about that. All right, here we go. So we just talked about taxes and who gets what. But here's the deal. Even though it looks like it's only impacting the suppliers, the reality is the producer surplus and consumer surplus and how much it shrinks very much impacts who what's known as bears the incidence of the tax, who is most negatively impacted by it. And basically put, the one whose surplus shrinks the most is the one who bears the incidence. So how do you figure that out? It's all about elasticity. So that's why we waited to learn about something like this until we knew elasticity, because otherwise it doesn't really tell you much about taxes. So to put it simply, if the demand curve is more inelastic, then the consumers are going to be the ones that are more hurt. So if the demand curve is inelastic, so kind of like more vertical in this case, you're going to have the consumers hurt much. That's because even with a big increase in price, they're not going to change their quantity, equilibrium quantity, that much. So let me give you a specific example. If you put a tax on cigarettes, like one of the elasticity examples asked you, you're not going to have people buying that much less because of that change in price, because it's a habit forming substance. So consumer surplus is going to shrink quite a lot, and it's really not going to curb people's smoking of cigarettes because of the fact that it's inelastic. Are you going to gain a lot of tax revenue from that? Yeah, yeah, you are. But it's going to impact the consumers more so because it's inelastic. If it's elastic, it's going to end up impacting the producers more. People are going to say, I don't need to buy as much of this, or I don't need to buy this at all. And because they're saying that, it's going to impact the producers more negatively, that tax. And they're going to have to what's known as bear the incidence of that tax. And then the last one, of course, would be unit elastic. And in that case, both sides bear the incidence of the tax equally. It's just shared equally, and they lose the same amount of consumer and producer surplus as each other. So there's the third and final video explaining today's concepts. And I'm really sorry that Schoology conferences didn't work, but we are going to make it work anyway. Have a good day.